Being great at sales is essential to your business and your career, but you and I know the stress of selling and dealing with constant rejection can be an emotional drain. My entire brand, No BS Selling, is focused on taking the power away from the buyer and creating a level playing field that makes selling easier, feel less cheesy, and be more lucrative. Welcome to my No BS Sales podcast, and I'm your host, Walker McKay. I'll help you and your sales team go from beat up to badass. It's time to change the rules and start selling without all the BS.
Welcome, No BS Sales Team. Thank you for listening to the show. Today's episode, we're going to go way back to the first episode I ever published, some 80-something weeks ago. And I've been really focused this last couple of weeks on stories, on why stories are important and what you need to do and how you tell your own story. So this first episode that I recorded some 18 months ago or so was my story to that point. And there seem to be lots of things in there. It's got lots of views. If you like it, please share it. If you like this podcast in general, how about smash the subscribe button for me? If you want to know more about what I do, go to walkermckay.com. There's information on the course there and also places where you can call and set up an appointment with me. I look forward to meeting with you. Share your comments. Please rate the podcast. Share it with your friends. Thanks, guys. Have a great week. We'll be back with a new guest next week.
Welcome to episode 1 of the No BS Sales Show. I'm your host, Walker McKay, and I'm a sales consultant and coach. I'm super excited to share with you some insider information that I've gleaned over the last 25 years about how the sales game really works and how it's designed to give your prospect all the control. The good news is you don't have to play that game anymore. I'm going to show you how to regain control of the sale, get some leverage during negotiations, and close more business. I'm doing this show because when I started in sales in 1987, I was given no sales training, and I didn't think I needed any. I thought I was a natural salesperson because I could talk to anybody, had lots of friends, and was fun to be around. The truth was I sucked at sales. I talked too much, wasted a lot of time trying to make friends with people who didn't need more friends, and chased deals way too long that never had a chance to close. I made it all worse by making a ton of excuses about why I wasn't getting it done. In other words, I'd bought into all the BS I'd heard about sales. This is not the right sales podcast for everybody. It's designed to challenge your views about sales and to help you cut through the BS to make more money. When I was little, I knew I wasn't like other people. My brain didn't work like everybody else's. I was a nice kid, raised by great parents. I couldn't study. I did okay in school. I made B's, some A's, some C's. My teachers said I didn't work hard enough. But I knew I just couldn't sit still. And somehow I made it through high school, and then I went to a good college and ended up, again, struggled in college to make things happen with my education. But I loved college. I was president of my fraternity and was popular and knew a bunch of people and was the life of the party. So my original plan was to go to law school. But I realized that the second word of law school was school and not college, and I wasn't very much interested in more school. So I said, to heck with that, I'm going to go into sales. People told me I should go into sales because, I could talk to anybody. It's like I said before. So the first place I went, there was a bank training program, which somebody explained to me would be like getting an MBA. And I was made a loan officer of the bank and given a branch to run. And I did that for about 18 months, and I quit just before I got fired. Once again, I couldn't focus on the stuff, on the day-to-day stuff, and I spent a lot of time out talking to people, but I wasn't great at closing business. So I decided I just couldn't be a banker because that was what it was, and clearly I wasn't cut out for that. About a month before I decided to quit, a friend of mine came in. He was in the commercial real estate business. He came into my branch and he deposited a check. He just made a commission check for, I think it was $12,000, which I think was the same as my entire year's salary. It was that day when that guy deposited that check, I said, well, hell, that's what I'm going to go do. If he can make that kind of money in one check, I need to go in commercial real estate. Once again, I'm from this town. I know everybody. Clearly, I'm good in sales. I should go in commercial real estate. So I went and applied at the largest firm in town. Interview went fine. They hired me. Here was the extent of my training at my commercial real estate job. There's the desk, there's the phone, there's the street, those are buildings. Go sell one. So that's where I started. For 10 years, that was my training. And I went every day, and I made the phone calls, and I knocked on doors, and I got listings, and I found some success. But it was hard as hell. It wasn't what I thought it would be. People weren't buying what I was selling. I couldn't figure out what was going on and why it wasn't working the right way. People weren't trusting me, they weren't believing, they weren't buying. I found myself wasting a ton of time with people that ended up kind of going around me. I couldn't figure it out. But I knew it couldn't be my fault. So I was fishing with a friend of mine one day, and he said, I've hired a sales coach. I said, a what? He said, a sales coach. I said, why the hell have you hired a sales coach? I said, you're from around here. You know everybody like I do. Why in the world would you need a sales coach? He said, I think I could be better. I kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, sure, whatever. And then I said, how much did you pay this sales coach? And he told me, and it was a lot of money. And I said, but I think you got ripped off. And I felt sorry for my friend because he'd gotten ripped off, taken by some guy who was a sales coach. And I said, I'm going to help you. I said, that's a bunch of crap, what that guy did to you, that he took your money. He's not going to be able to help you. I'm going to go meet him. I'm going to find out. I'm going to let him know that I know I'm onto him and that he ripped you off, and I'm going to get your money back. My friend kind of shrugged his shoulder and says, okay. So I called this sales coach, and he agreed to meet with me. I told him why I was meeting with him. I thought he ripped my friend off. And the guy agreed to meet with me. And we sat down and talked, and he said, well, tell me about you. I know you're in commercial real estate. You must be making $700,000, $800,000 a year. I laughed and said, no, not yet. He said, how long you been doing it? I said, 9 years. He said, huh. He said, $400,000 or $500,000 a year? And I said, nope. $300,000 a year? I said, not yet. He said, huh, why? I said, well, I mean, good grief, it's Columbia, South Carolina, not a great commercial real estate town. Plus, the economy's in the tank. Lawyers been killing my deals. Plus, I work in this huge commercial real estate office. I got lots of competitors. The boss gives away leads to his best buddies. That's not me. I don't play politics like that. And the sales coach looked at me and said, huh, okay. He said, suppose I told you I thought those were excuses. And it stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, oh my God. And then he said, Walker, where else in your life are you making excuses? And it was like he took a sword and ran it right through me. It was the coup de grace. I gasped for air. So I talked to him further, and I figured out that the guy was onto something, that I absolutely was making excuses. I almost cried when I told him I lived in a crappy apartment and didn't have a girlfriend, and I was 30, and my mom thought I was never going to get married because I was such a mess. I ended up writing him a check to be my sales coach, to help me grow my business. And the thing that I think I grew up that day, because what I learned was I'd been making excuses for my lack of performance. And as long as I was making excuses, I was never going to get better. I had to accept that I was the problem, and that I was the only solution, and that I was the only person who could fix that. So as I move forward and I begin to see processes and systems and all these things about sales, the psychology of selling that I had no idea existed, that there are all these rules of the game that I didn't know were being played. And I was like, holy smoke. All of a sudden it's starting to make sense. So I ended up quitting the large firm, and I went to work. I started my own commercial real estate consulting firm. And my idea was to go help buyers buy commercial real estate, because it was a pretty tough market There were a lot of shrewd people out there, and a lot of people who were selling farms and selling their family property and reinvesting in other things. If you reinvest back in commercial real estate, you don't pay the capital gains tax. And I figured there had to be some people out there that were worried about that didn't want to get taken, didn't have the time to do the due diligence necessary, maybe wanted help getting financing and all the other things that were necessary. And so I set up shop on my own. I had no clients. I had very little money in the bank. I had a pretty big mortgage and a wife whose job it was going to end in 6 months, and she wanted to stay home and have children. So I started this, and what I realized was unless I differentiated myself, unless I was going to be different than other people, I was not going to do well. I'd be no different than before. And as I was studying and reading and talking to my coach, I said, you know what? I said, there's got to be some value to helping people. There's got to be some way. In the traditional way in real estate, the way a broker gets paid is when in the end of a transaction, if somebody buys something, a commission is paid. I said, there's got to be a way to flip that on its head. And I knew there had to be some buyers that would have an issue that would want help. And so I changed my business model so that it would be, you write a check to me for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and I would represent you in the sale. Help you find the right properties, help you tell you which ones weren't the right ones. And if you didn't find anything you liked, then my time would have been covered. You would have known you scoured the marketplace and know you didn't make a mistake. If you did buy something, I got paid a commission. It's interesting because I mentioned that to one of my doctor friends. He said, holy cow, I had no idea that was available. And he became my first client. And then he referred me to his father-in-law, and the father-in-law referred me to one of his friends. You have to understand, I wasn't getting referred before. And all of a sudden, I became a person in the marketplace who was helping people in a way they hadn't been helped before. And it was interesting because the people who said that would never work were other brokers in the marketplace. They would come to me and say, why the hell would somebody pay you $5,000, $10,000 to do that when I do it for free? I say, I don't know, but they're doing it. And the reason they would do that is because I wasn't trying to sell them commercial real estate. It's because I'd learned the secret that people buy for emotional, compelling reasons. I'd help somebody discover that the reason they would spend money is because, one of the reasons was because they're afraid something bad might happen if they don't. I set myself up more as a guide than a salesperson, where I help guide people to do the right thing. It was great, and I loved it. And I got referred a bunch of business, and all of a sudden, I was closing a lot of business. And I don't think I ever made $800,000 in a year, but I did do better than I ever thought I would. And it was funny because I hung onto my coach's leg the whole time. I said, you got to help me. And he did. He hung in there with me. And one day he called me and he said, hey, Walker, I'm growing my business. I want to go to a couple other cities. I need to work with somebody else who thinks like I do, who can help other people like you know how to help them. I hate to take you away from what you're doing now, but are you interested in doing training and coaching with me? It's kind of interesting. I said, wow, it sounds like fun. I can't imagine. Sounds great. I figured I'd be a natural once again. I knew what he did. I knew the systems and processes. I put it in commercial real estate form. I knew how that worked. This could be great. I got my butt kicked for the next 18 months, 2 years as I started over. It's funny, you get this thing called imposter syndrome where you see yourself in your old role. You have to kind of buy into the new role. You have to understand that this is different. I felt like I was a commercial real estate guy who was acting like a sales trainer guy. But eventually I got it. And again, over the next 10, 11, 12 years, we grew that business. We helped hundreds of companies, probably 1,000 salespeople grow and get better. It was super fun and super cool. Then I failed again. Over time, I failed to keep the relationship up with my partner. Kind of gone in different directions. You ever get to the point in a relationship, you ever know this, where you kind of get, somebody starts to get under your skin, they start to aggravate you, and even the way they eat a turkey sandwich drives you crazy? It's kind of the way I got. And it got to the point where I was clearly that way with him as well. And I went to go have lunch with a client of mine one day, and I hadn't told anybody. My wife knew that I was not happy. My wife knew things weren't going well. She'd see me frustrated. But I went to go have lunch with a client one day, and the client was just a normal, meet with him about once a quarter. This guy runs a company, and he said, when I sat down to lunch, he said, "You look like shit." And I laughed because that's the way I like to greet people, because it catches them off guard. And he caught me off guard. And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous, I'm about to die." He said, "Why?" I said, "I hadn't told anybody." I said, "But I'm miserable in this business partnership. I got to get out of here." And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "I've been a jerk. He's been a jerk. It's 50% my fault, 50% his, but it's just not working out." And as I looked up across the lunch table, my client, my friend, held his hand up to me like a stop sign. I said, "What?" He said, "Walker, it's 100% your fault." I said, "What?" He said, "It's not 50% his fault. It's 100% your fault." He said, "Until you take 100% responsibility for the failure of that partnership," he said, "you'll be mad at the wrong person and you'll never get over it." Damn it. He's exactly right. I was making excuses again. So it was that day I knew what I had to do. I knew I needed to go to my partner and apologize for being a jerk, and I knew I needed to get out of there. I had no plan, had a 3-year non-compete, I had no clients, I just built a giant house that I loved, but I knew I had to leave because if I stayed, I was going to make excuses. So a week later, I went to my partner and I said, "I'm sorry, I've been a jerk, I need to leave. You keep the business is yours, it's all yours, you have it. I won't go after the clients, I know I have a non-compete. You run with it." And we worked things out and I left. And I figured in the next 90 days that somebody would scoop me up and I would have a job, the dream job, making $1 million a year, doing what I love to do. And nothing happened. People were happy for me, they were thrilled, they said nice things, but nobody said, "Hey, here's your $1 million job." What did happen though was one of my old clients said, "You trained me how to manage a sales team. I'm the CEO of my company. I hate doing that. Will you help me by doing that part-time? I can't pay you what you're worth. Will you come work with me part-time?" I said, "Sure," since I had no other offers. Happy to do that. I said, "You realize though, I've never managed a sales team before, right? I've been training it, but I've never done that before. I've done sales for 20 years, but I've never managed a sales team." He goes, "Look, you can figure it out. You know how to do it. You just have to do it." Okay. So I took him on. And then another company that I'd worked with in the past did the same thing. So I started a business being an outsourced VP of sales and working with sales teams and trying to figure things out and put it together. And I love the business. I love getting involved with people. I love the coaching. I was able to put processes in. What I found was, though, I couldn't scale it. I struggled. And I didn't know how to grow that. So I ended up, about a year ago, as I'd go from having 3 or 4 or 5 clients that I was doing outsourced VP of sales work to, I'd go from 5 to 2, and then 3 and 4 and 5, and then 2 or 3, with my cash flow going up and down, and again, 2 kids in private school. All of a sudden I realized financially it wasn't working. I didn't see myself working for somebody else, and nobody else had offered me that. And I had this big old mortgage payment. I sold the house. I had to move my family into a rental house about half the size. Sucked. We did, because we knew we had to get it right. So about the same time, an old buddy of mine called and said, "Walker, you need to take what you have, the knowledge you have about sales," and he said, "You need to share it with a larger group of people." He said, "You need to put this out." He said, "With the power of the web and social media, you need to share what you know with other people." and help them be better at sales, live their lives better. I was feeling a little cynical at the time. I said, that's a great idea. How the hell do you do that? And he said, I know how to do that. He said, are you committed to do that? I said, sure. So we started this journey in November of 2017. And moving forward, and all of a sudden we started the No BS Sales School, where I use a process I've created, I've learned, formed, the No BS selling process to help level the playing field between buyer and seller, to help make it more fun to be in sales, to help sales be where you're not, as a salesperson, often buyers will just use you and chew you up and spit you out. And what I know is there's a better way. So what I want to offer you today on this first podcast are three things I want you to think about and take action on. Three kind of rules and concepts. Number one is your ego has no place in a sales call. Zero. A lot of times people go on a sales call so that they can feel better about themselves, so they can be the hero, so they can go kick ass and win. What I'll tell you is when your ego leads a sales call, you're going to lose. Your ego has no place there. The right way to go on a sales call is to be equal. So there's the second thing I want you to know. You need to assume equal business stature with your prospects. Not higher, not lower, but the same. See, the thing is, when you go in with your ego thinking you're the hero, the buyer is who controls you. And you end up being you end up being lower to them. You need to go in as an equal. And what that means is we set the rules of the game. First of all, we have to assume we're not going to be the hero, we're going to be the guide. We want our prospect to be the hero. We have to realize we're not right for everybody. We're not the right fit for everybody that's involved. And understand it's okay for us to say no. It's okay for our prospect to say no. No is my second favorite word. I hear it all the time. So as an equal, it's okay for me to say no, and I'm perfectly okay when somebody else tells me no. And I want to make that real clear up front. We've got rules of engagement we're going to follow. It's going to be okay. And I'm not here to win. I'm here to be your guide and help you win. And if you want to hire me, that's great. If you don't want to hire me, that's okay too. Equal business stature. The last thing I want you to know, the last takeaway, is that great salespeople ask, they don't tell. Great salespeople ask questions. They don't share their opinions until they're paid for their opinions. Your job as a salesperson with your ego to the side and equal business stature with your prospect is to learn, does your prospect have a problem? Are they committed to fix the problem somewhere, somehow? How do they think it should be fixed? What do they think the right budget is to spend on it? What's their time frame? All these things to understand where the buyer is coming from, to find out what the buyer is capable of. See, most salespeople go in and they take the solution and they're trying to jam the solution down the buyer's throat. What I will tell you is we need to go in with the concept, the belief, we're not right for everybody. Don't know if I can help you at all. I'm going to be skeptical as I ask you questions. Chances are we're going to get to know where I'm going to think this isn't the right fit for us, or you're going to say, I don't want to go through this. It's magic, though, when you work with a buyer and you take them through a process that is respectful to them and to you, and you take your time to fully understand what the prospect's going through, and then you help them. Their trust level on you stays high and only gets higher. They'll refer you business. Sales becomes fun again and more lucrative. And you begin to see that you don't have to play the game that you don't have any control of. All of a sudden you can flip the rules, you can flip the script, and you can have 50% control of the game. In my podcast, We're going to talk to people who have learned to control the game, who have learned to be equals with their prospects, and by doing that, to turn away a lot of business that wasn't going to be good for them in the first place. And by getting the right business, they can have a hell of a lot of fun in their work because they're working with the right clients, doing the right creative work. And then those people refer them to other good people. In our upcoming episodes, we'll interview business owners, salespeople, entrepreneurs who have adopted a no BS insight process to selling and living and running a business, and you'll get to see how they win. Come along for the ride. I look forward to talking with you, to working with you, to hearing from you. Let's be better together.